Hello, welcome back to the Pro Pilot Playbook podcast, where we bring you insights into your aviation career and encouragement to get out there and start on it. The tips, the tricks, the hacks, the shortcuts to get you through your pilot training and to the point of being a paid pilot faster and cheaper. And I'm Sean, and we got Mike
I'm
here.
Mike Martin. Yeah.
Today's podcast, and we've been off the air again. I feel like I say this, been saying this the last couple of podcasts, but it's just been getting busy out there.
Oh man, it's summertime too. You know, everybody's traveling and doing things and trying to enjoy the new summer of 2021. You know.
Yeah. Everything's opened up and people are out there. Yeah, exactly. Which means not only are we doing that stuff ourselves, but you know, in our industry, people are it's just blowing up, especially on the private side of things right now.
Right. Totally.
Yes. But there's been things morphing and you know, my situation with aircraft leaving and new airplanes coming in. I'm going to school on a new jet here in just about a week. So a lot of things moving around right now. Just been busy. But today's podcast, we're going to talk about the recent thing that's been all over the news and at least in our world. You know, the crash out in Truckee-Tahoe, California, the Challenger 605 crash. So a little bit of industry news, and it's a sad thing.
Yeah. Anytime, you know, there's a crash in this business, everybody's all eyeballs are on it, speculating, trying to figure out what happened. Because, you know, fortunately, it doesn't happen too often. And when one of these does, it's big news. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and you know, one good thing, Sean, that came out of the coronavirus is we got used to these Zoom podcasts. We used to get together and do them in person, and then that was even harder with our schedules with our both traveling. Now we've got the Zoom thing going. So I mean, this is fantastic. As you can see, I'm in a layover here in a small town in Iowa. So I found at the Holiday Inn Express.
That doesn't look like Iowa.
No. It's I'm actually in Chicago now, so I'm on the Magnificent Mile here on the 37th floor. So, but yeah, beautiful day in Chicago, man. It's like 69 degrees this morning when I was out. I think the high is 75 or something. So,
yeah.
What a nice place to come in the summer. You know, I'm not a big fan in the winter, but in the summer, it's
right.
Yeah,
I've been traveling a lot too, but I'm just back at the command post here.
Awesome.
So I can record the podcast.
Great. Yeah, somebody's got to do the heavy lifting, man.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you know, this I've been following this crash pretty closely because I think most viewers mentioned I fly a Challenger variant now of this airplane, a 300, which is a new version of it. But I've got actually about 1,000 hours in the airframe that crashed here. The Challenger 604 is what I used to fly. This is a Challenger 605. So really the only difference, it's a newer version of the 604 is avionics. There's just to give a little background on the plane, and I know Sean's flown this as a regional jet.
Yeah, I've flown the stretch. They call it the stretch 604, 605, which was the RJ 200.
Yeah.
The CRJ 200, which is it's the exact same airplane. They just put a few more feet of fuselage on it and stuck 50 seats in it. And those were those first RJs flying around.
Yeah. This plane, this variant of this airplane is probably, I mean, I'm shooting from the hip here, but one of the most successful designs ever.
They built thousands of them. Thousands is the right word, but definitely. I think it is just under 2,000 of them built or something.
Yeah, crazy. But the design was originally Bill Lear's design.
Yeah,
the godfather of corporate flying in the 70s, and then they call them the 600 series, but you know, they had the 601, and really it's a lot of just avionics. The 601 had like steam gauges. Then they came out with the 604, had the Collins Proline 4, which is a nice package. And then the 605, which is the latest version that these guys were flying, is has the Collins Proline 21, which is really nice avionics in it. But they did a few things over the years. I mean, since the 70s, they added different fuel tanks and things to increase the range. But really, it's all been the same. same. And then, like you said, they stretched it, and then that became the Canadair regional jet, which probably most of our viewers have been on. I mean, it's a
Sure.
super successful airplane. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
There,
Yeah.
there are. I mean, just coming over experience of flying those types of planes. I mean, the wing is a little slippery on those. It's a laminar flow wing, and
Right.
one of the other most famous crashes. There's been several, but
Oh yeah, yeah. I know what you're about to say.
yeah, the Dick Eversole crash in Montrose, Colorado, from de-icing. But the wing is so slick; it's very sensitive to any type of contamination on it.
Right. They call it a supercritical wing or whatever, I think was the word they used.
Right,
Uh,
right. Yeah, for the viewers that are into it, you can look at that crash up, but basically it was it's one that's studied over and over again now in training, and I'm sure this one will be too. But the basically the
Frost. It was
frost, yeah,
Frost. It wasn't even
yeah,
anything. Yeah.
yeah, and the pilots made a decision it wasn't that bad. They didn't need to spray the airplane with the ice fluid, and because a lot of jets it was fine, but in this particular airplane, yeah, they did that. So, and then it crashed right off the runway, and it
Not
killed.
that it was fine legally ever, but as you're out there and have experience, you start to learn what different machines will do and not do. And
Thanks for
somebody,
failing me in court there. Yeah,
and somebody made a bad decision.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it killed a high profile. I think he was a sportscaster or something was on board or something. Yeah, yeah, but yeah, this one. So we'll get into the details of it, but it seems like a stall might have occurred here. But this is Truckee, California. So for the viewers that aren't familiar with that region of the country, so it's Lake Tahoe is where this is.
Mm-hmm.
So Lake Tahoe is an awesome lake outside of it's about a 3 hour drive from San Francisco in the mountains. It's super deep. It's super beautiful, high elevation. I think the lake is like 2,000 feet deep, super clear water, mountains all around it. You can ski there in the winter. In the summer, though, it's super popular for boating. And
Sure.
the lake is half in California and half in Nevada. So Truckee, California, is an airport that accesses one side of the lake, Truckee, which is a high-end vacation area of the lake. It takes hours to drive around this lake. It's huge. So there's South Lake Tahoe, which is half in California, half in Nevada, where there's a bunch of casinos. That's the more touristy place where probably a lot of our viewers may have been. And there's an airport there. That wasn't this airport. And then the north side of the lake, there's Incline Village, which is another nice area in Nevada where a lot of big homes there because the taxes are cheaper. I know a lot about this lake. The taxes are cheaper on the Nevada side than the California side. So there's a lot of huge homes. I know a lot of tech people have in Incline Village. That airport, or that's actually most serviceable from the Reno airport. So there's the Reno Tahoe International Airport, which is by far the best and biggest airport that services the lake. That drive time is closer. But if you have a customer that lives in Truckee, obviously the Truckee Airport is better because it's on the other side of the lake, and then South Lake is even closer. So obviously, these people were probably going to Truckee. It's not your first choice. In fact, of the three airports, I would consider it the most challenging. It is it's high elevation, and there's a lot of terrain around it, and it's one of the nobody like you tighten your seatbelt up when you go into for sure. Have you been up there before, Sean?
No, I have never landed at the airport, but I have done approaches into this airport in the simulator. I don't remember what the details were about it, why we were doing it, but the airport sits at 6,500 feet in
Yeah,
elevation.
right.
That's it. Not on a day like this. I just pulled up what the density altitude is for the airport today with heat and density altitude. For some of you just getting into aviation, that's a fancy word for what the airplane the altitude that it feels like it's flying at. It takes into account the temperature and humidity. So even though the airport sits at 6,500 feet above sea level today, with today's weather, temperature, and dew point, or dew point's fancy word for humidity, the airplane would feel like it's flying at about 8,000 feet off the ground. That's sitting, wheels on the ground, not even, trying to fly a pattern around the airport.
That
And
changes your performance a great deal. Right.
yeah, yeah. And you mix that in with, like Mike just said, terrain on both sides of the airport, or not. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it creates a situation where you got to be on point.
Yeah, for
That
sure.
is some of the initial, Mike and I were just talking before we hit the record button. Some of the initial stuff coming out of this right now is that the crew, one of the crew members may have been new to the airplane.
Right.
So, and that, although most of these machines, it's somewhat like riding a bike. They all have their own little nuances, and I call it the settling in period. When you get in a new
Oh, yeah.
airplane, where you're trying to learn all its moves and how it thinks and stuff. And um, you take a situation going into a challenging airport like this, and you mix that into the recipe of, this pilot may not have been settled into that machine all the way. It's a lot of work.
Absolutely. And I guess we should say a disclaimer here, at the time that we're filming this,
Right.
there's
This
not,
just happened a couple days ago, 4 days ago.
yeah, so we're just shooting from the hip here, based on what we've read. But
There's been no initial anything from the NTSB or anything yet.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So before we get any mean comments like, that's not right, this is not, yeah, yeah. So this is just based on gossip, really. So we're just gonna tell you what we think based on what we've heard and our experience going in there. So one thing that's going on out there, and it's every summer, unfortunately, and we do a lot of traveling with my company all around the West in the summer because it's so beautiful, is these wildfires, and they're
Yeah.
a problem, and you can, there's a Google app where you can track where all the fires are, and depending on which way the wind's blowing, where the smoke can be, because it can actually ruin your trip if you're going out there on vacation. I've been to some of these places where you land and it literally smells like a campfire. The visibility's
Oh yeah.
down. Sometimes there's ash in the air.
Yeah.
And there's an article. It's kind of interesting. I was going into Michigan a couple weeks ago, northern Michigan, and the visibility was super reduced, and it was because of smoke. But actually, if you read about it, the fires are so bad out west. Some of this smoke is getting caught up in the jet stream, and it's traveling as far as Canada and northern Michigan and stuff.
Yeah.
We in Cincinnati were getting those sunsets, the really red sunsets from the smoke. So this area where Tahoe is ground zero for these. I mean, there's always wildfires out there, and it looks like smoke was a contributing factor. I believe the visibility is 3 or 4 miles. Is that right? I think I heard.
You know what? I don't recall, but yeah, I mean, they called the airport, and that's another thing. In the links in the comments section below, we're gonna reference a couple things we're talking about. There's the ATC. There's a video somebody posted of the actual ATC audio. You'll hear the pilots talking to the controllers, and you can hear them call the airport in sight. They have the runway in sight, and they were doing an approach to the shorter runway.
Yeah.
There's 2 runways out there. They were doing the approach to the shorter runway. After they had the airport in sight, they decided to circle to the longer runway for runway length, because it's bigger. It's a bigger airplane. At least for the smaller runway is 4,600 feet long, and
Right.
the big runway is 7,000 feet long. So they were coming in on the approach for the shorter runway, and I'm going to put the airport diagram on the screen right now and put some arrows of what's happening. And then they circled around to the longer runway, but somewhere in that circle, there was supposedly this smoke issue from the fires, and they may have lost sight of the runway, may have lost sight of the ground, even most likely lost sight of the ground, and
Yes.
and then got themselves into a bad situation. There's also another link to a video. This is the other link. There is somebody's Ring camera attached to the front door of the house there, that has audio. It's actually pretty good audio of you can hear the jet, you can hear the engine spooling up, where they were trying to get themselves out of that bad situation when they realized what was happening, and you can even hear the impact in the video.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's pretty crazy stuff. It's eerie to listen to. Just
Well,
FYI.
Yeah, a lot of questions here. If they're landing on 11, why were they shooting the approach for 20? But there's several different things.
I think
I
you
think.
said that backwards. Why, if they're landed on 20, why are they shooting approach for 11?
Gotcha. No, no, no. They were on the approach for 20 and they circled to 11. And they were limo
Oh, I'm
inbound.
sorry. I said it backwards. Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, normally you would just shoot the approach for that runway. Now it could be wind. There could have been issues of why that is. I know 11's got more terrain. The approach does. I'm looking at it, and the minimums are not as low. So, for whatever reason, and then there's another thing circulating on the internet that the runway lighting on the longer runway is better. Or I don't even think the smaller runway has lights. So maybe they circle for that. But Sean and I were talking. I think you guys, that are viewers that are in your primary training, just getting started, getting your pilot's license, they'll teach you about the base to final turn and the stall. But it is a common problem, private pilots and everybody alike. When you're turning from base to final, your load factor changes on the wing, and you can
Sure.
get slower, easier. Well, you compound that with high altitude, right? And then they're in this big, heavy airplane that they're new to. It sounds like they just got slow. And when you're in a prop and you do that, you can just cob in a bunch of power and you're fine. In a jet, as we know, there's what they call a spool up time. So if you're like looking, they're circling and they're looking out at the airport, both pilots, and they're like, oh, there's a runway, you got it all. And then, you could have a cornering tailwind. So a lot of times the wind is actually pushing
Sure.
behind you when you're in the turn. Oh, we overshot. Let's pull back. And then they get a little steep. Then they keep pulling back. Next thing you know, you're in the stall regime, and then you cob in a bunch of power, and then there's a delay on the engines, and then you
Right.
hear on that ring camera, you can hear them spooling up.
Right.
So that's probably too late. You've already stalled the airplane. It's heading in towards the ground, and then the engines are spooling up. So it's kind of
Right.
scary.
You can actually, I mean, you could get yourself in such a bad situation if you really weren't paying attention. By the time the spool up fully gets underway, the airplane could be at an attitude, which now you've just exaggerated everything even
Yes.
worse. And especially when you realize that you're getting into that bad situation, and now you've got full control forces the other way, and there's not enough wind over anything to do, or energy over any of the control surfaces to do anything. Now you're stalling the airplane even worse. That's why that you need to break the stall. And but the other thing to remember is there's something that happens, to when you're flying an approach like this, even in visual conditions. But for some reason, it messes with you even more a little bit coming in when you got partial instrument conditions. In instrument conditions, as in you can't see out the windows, you're inside the airplane. But
Yeah.
when you're coming into an airport where you've got terrain above you on one side or the other or both sides, and you are flying the airplane on this approach down below this terrain, every now and then you get a glimpse out the window through the clouds of you're below the mountains, and you get that speed rush of how fast you're going and everything. It messes with you a little bit. Plus, like Mike just mentioned, these machines, when you take into account density, altitude, and everything, and this airport's a high altitude, the machine doesn't operate like it normally does. Like 90 out of 100 times that you fly this thing at a elevation of somewhere around 500 to 1,000 feet off the ground, like everywhere we have on the East Coast, you
Right.
get out there, and especially when the airplane's fully configured, as in landing gear down, flaps, the machine just feels different. It feels kind of wonky. It feels like a big old truck that's got
Yeah.
loose steering on it or something.
Yes.
And it that messes with you too
Oh
sometimes,
yeah.
because everything, that all those little motor skills that are built into your brain from thousands of hours of flying are giving you mixed signals to your brain, and you take that into account, and losing track of the runway. They're doing a goofy turn here. I can totally see how they could get themselves in a bad situation really fast.
Yeah. The engines too. They don't produce as much thrust.
Exactly. Yeah. The your engine, your throttle, your
Oh
power
my.
response is completely different. Yeah.
taxiing in Aspen, you're like, you land and they're like, okay, let's taxi up here.
Oh
And you
yeah,
push the
yeah.
throttle up a little bit, and you're like, why
Just
are we out of
driving
it?
around on the ground. Exactly. Yeah, just taxi.
Yeah. You
Yeah,
know, if you in that spool up thing, if you guys research, it's just one of the things I remember. The F-86 Saberjet, which was one of the first fighters, that thing was
that thing was like a jet built. It was an airplane built on a jet engine.
oh yeah,
Like you're
and these
sitting on top of jet engine.
all these old jet engines, man. It was like you push the throttles up and then you could eat your lunch, and then they finally start spinning up. You know, so they've gotten much better with all these FADEC controls, and the engines that are on the Challenger are pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
they the same.
GE baby, right here in Cincinnati.
Yep. CF-34s. That those were designed for the A10, which
Yeah,
is a
those are A10.
low level fighter. Yeah. It's got a huge fan, and you can get thrust, but there's still a few seconds there where
Right.
you don't have anything. And man, it's scary actually thinking about, but yeah, that's an unfortunate event. There's some things coming out a little bit about where the flight was coming from and the passengers and all that stuff. But it sounds like preliminarily the airplane was registered to Fort Lauderdale company, but that doesn't mean really it could have been a charter. I haven't heard whether it was someone renting the plane or
It could have been.
owner.
It could have been some guy who owns a bunch of airplanes in Florida who just leases them out to people.
Yeah. And then the flight they think originated from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, which is just a beautiful place in Idaho that people go in the summer. There's a big lake there.
Yeah, that's in the video. That's on record. Yeah, that's where they're coming from. Yeah.
A lot of ultra wealthy people there to go there from California. A lot of celebrities too. Actually, when I started that, I'm like, oh man, I wonder if it's somebody famous. But looks like it's some real estate people. I was just reading before the podcast, maybe, and their agent or something. I think Canadian people, and then their agent from Palm Springs or something was on there. But just, man, really a sad thing. So Sean, let them know. So how these things can take forever, right, before they all get unraveled. I mean,
yeah. So I was just reading the NTSB just finished up. They just left the site. They've got everything they need. All the folks involved have been identified. Total of 6, the 4 passengers, 2 pilots. So yeah, I mean, it could be anywhere from it. I mean, sometimes it's as short as a couple months, but I've seen investigations take over a year before they post it. Everybody's even forgotten it happened, and then NTSB will release their report on it.
Right.
But it sounds like, I mean, just looking at the stuff there was some actual eyewitnesses. Some folks that actually saw the airplane impact.
They hit a golf course, I think.
Yeah. So I think they've got enough stuff. We may hear about this one, pretty quickly. And that airplane has, well, you know what? I shouldn't say that. I'm not sure if that one has. I don't know. Did the 604 have data?
Yeah, it's got, well, obviously the voice, but it also has a computer that monitors all the movements and stuff.
Right, because those control surfaces were hydraulic, right?
Yeah, they'll be able to tell the airspeed and all that stuff once they download all that from the black box.
So they may have something here relatively quickly.
Yeah, man. And then of course the repercussions in the industry will be
get ready for the insurance rates to go up.
And then every single pilot that goes through recurrent training is going to have to do a base to final turn.
Yep. They're going to redesign our stall procedure training. Yeah.
But that's good. I mean, that's what we need to do is adapt so these things don't happen. But
I mean, it's been this way, and the number gets higher and higher as the years go by. It used to be, way back when in the 60s and 70s, when you look at the percentage of what causes aircraft accidents, there was always a way larger percentage of it being mechanical. As we've gotten into this, the technology of we're making things better, we're manufacturing things better, and just in general, these machines are becoming way more reliable, and we've written the rules around the mechanical stuff is almost out of it now. I mean, we're in the high 90 some percentile that when something crashes, it is the pilot's fault.
Absolutely. Yep.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. So all these things we do in training every 6 months or every year
Right.
are written in blood. We identified something new. We need to make sure everybody understands, and
Yep.
we'll be training it in the simulator.
That's right. That's right. Good. Well, anything else to add on it, you think?
I don't know. I think we hit it. Check out the links below though. That ring camera video, man, that one got me. And
Yeah.
listen to the ATC also. At no point do you. This is how fast things sneak up. Listening to the pilot, it was most likely the pilot not flying. So whoever wasn't operating the controls was working the radio, and nobody seems too concerned about anything. He's calm. He's just doing the normal radio calls, and then you hear the controllers coming back. Everybody, the airport's closed, basically.
Yep. I heard it may have been a contract pilot on there too. So
yeah. You mentioned that because the guy was new to the aircraft. One of the pilots was new to the aircraft. So this is common in our industry. You get a contract guy out there who has more time in the airplane. Meets the insurance requirements, and
Yeah. Well, we'll see how this unfolds. And if anybody else watching has some more theories that we didn't touch on, leave it in the comments and we'll take a look.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for joining us here at the Pro Pop Playbook podcast. And we're going to be back answering some more questions with you here. And we also have the podcast coming up that I promised on the last podcast. I started putting it together, and it's actually, and I'm referring to the cadet programs, the airline cadet programs. That thing there's way more of them than I thought there was. And the stuff's kind of moving around. It's a moving target. But anyway, I've got a pretty good list of things together here on the cadet program. Some good info. That would be a good one to watch, actually.
Yep.
But awesome. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks a lot.